Good afternoon, Joe.
Are we? All right. So good afternoon. My name is Joe Bourne. I'm here representing the Protect Sandbridge Beach Coalition. We're a group of concerned Virginia Beach citizens who've sought to educate ourselves and our community about Avangrid and their proposed Kitty Hawk offshore wind project. As we've learned more about this project, we've reached out to other stakeholders and decision makers at the local and state level. This includes a proactive outreach to civic leagues, HOAs, or private groups around the community. And I'd like to extend my thanks to Suzanne and to the Say Greater Dowses Beach group for allowing me to participate in today's summit. To start, I thought it'd be helpful to give you a high-level picture of the Kitty Hawk proposal. As you can see from the pictures shown, the wind lease area for this project is approximately 25 miles east of the Outer Banks, with a proposed offshore cable route that runs northwest into Sandbridge Beach, a community located in Virginia Beach, Virginia. This is a 3.5 gigawatt project, which makes it the largest single landfall in the U.S. and the largest that Avangrid has ever attempted. Landfall will include 6 offshore export cables being landed into 6 transition joint bays, as you know, each the size of a rail car. These cables are then split into 18 separate transmission lines. The onshore cables will run approximately 6 miles along the red route shown in the picture to the right, through Sandbridge, through the Back Bay National Wildlife Refuge, and then through surrounding communities until it terminates at a newly built substation in an area we call Corporate Landing. And while they claim that all the lines will be run underground, they've reserved the right to go above ground along the section bounded by the yellow arrows shown in that same picture. Avangrid does not propose to make landfall in some isolated area of Sandbridge, but in the heart of our community. There's one road into Sandbridge from the mainland. The main intersection is the hub of shopping, restaurants, public parking, fire and rescue, and is the singular access in and out of our community. It is essentially our community's front porch. Now, the major timeline of events for us is shown in this summary. In like fashion with so many of their other projects, Avangrid spent the first several years quietly courting city officials with no public engagement. But in 2022, public visibility began to take shape, primarily in the Sandbridge community. By the end of that year, we were told by most people we reached out to that this project was, and I quote, a done deal. At a February 2023 City Council meeting, Avangrid, with the support of the Virginia Beach Economic Development Group, made a push for the easement approvals that are needed to make landfall in Sandbridge. A strong community presence at that meeting gave City Council pause, and more formal public briefing was ordered. This briefing was held in May. Avangrid presented their case, and approximately 70 Virginia Beach residents spoke largely in opposition. The meeting ran for about 4 hours and ended with City Council advising Avangrid that they needed to more properly engage the public. In October and November, Avangrid made a final push by scheduling multiple public engagement forums in an effort to check the box and push City Council for a vote. Notably, none of these public sessions were held in any of the affected areas of the city. Later in November, City Council had apparently heard and seen enough, and they made a public statement of non-support for the Kitty Hawk project and advised Avangrid accordingly. Now, as of today, Avangrid is attempting to work around this decision at the state level. The city, along with affected communities, are mobilizing our efforts to fight them at the State House. So while our fight is not over, if you had asked us where we thought we would be just 12 months ago, we would have told you that the city was going to grant easement and this project would be moving forward at pace. What I'd like to spend the rest of my time on is sharing how we went from it's a done deal to no support over the course of the last year. As we get into this discussion, let me start by saying this has been a full community effort. People have written, called, and shown up. Presence matters, and we encouraged everyone to speak their mind, not from a script, but we took the position that presence alone would not carry the day. Our group took the responsibility to research all aspects of the project and educate ourselves, our communities, and our city leaders. To develop our strategy, we work with the simple model depicted in this graphic and ask ourselves how we might best tip the debate in our favor. In any debate, you're looking for points of leverage. This picture led us to three basic tactics we tried to consistently employ: add weight to our position, remove weight from their position, and win the credibility battle to shift that fulcrum to our advantage, adding to the leverage we needed to win. As we apply this model to our local situation, on the left of the scale, you see a sampling, just a sampling of the specific issues we've dealt with in the Virginia Beach area, alongside some of the opposition argument that has been made by Avangrid and their supporters. Below the bar, you see the credibility tug of war that's been going on to secure credibility with decision makers. In general, I would share three observations from this. First, local issues that will move decision makers tend to be unique for each community, and it takes some time to find the right issues and the right messaging around those issues to shape opinion. For purposes of today, I'm not going to dwell much on our local issues for just that reason. All I can say is that we are actively seeking to learn new things and new ways to frame our issues to keep our arguments on point on an almost daily basis. Second, the opposition themes seem to be more common in each community. This is the best alternative. These are the great economic benefits. Here are the environmental benefits and how it will impact climate change. And then lastly, the credibility tug of war also shares similarities when it comes to a specific developer, in our case, Avangrid. They play the same cards against you, and they carry the same weaknesses with them from place to place. So in my remaining time, I'd like to spend a few minutes talking about our response to the second and third points, since these are the areas of potentially shared interest. So let's first talk a little bit about removing weight from their position. We'll start with claimed economic benefits, and you all know the story. Billions of dollars, hundreds of jobs, a unicorn in every backyard. And while I could argue all afternoon about the fallacies in these promises, it was an argument we did not have the resources to win. Virginia Beach is part of a shared metropolitan area called Hampton Roads, which boasts the Norfolk Naval Shipyards. This is a major coastal asset that is keenly interested in supporting this offshore activity. The regional chambers of commerce, the state economic development boards, etc., were all in support. So rather than argue against those benefits, we took a different approach. We purposely separated the grid connection portion of the project from that benefit altogether. In doing this, we were able to put our number one concern, landfall and cable routing, in a different economic light, and it put the local risks into a much better perspective. We've routinely argued that grid connection has no bearing on the development of this proposed Hampton Roads offshore wind hub. And this is supported by a 2019 Virginia Department of Energy study on that specific topic. What we feel great satisfaction with right now is that when we started, this was not a consideration, and now we hear city council members saying exactly what we've been saying. Secondly, the environmental claims. Climate change will be eradicated, no more fossil fuels, the oceans will stop rising. This is the common argument again and again, and we could argue factually against that as well. The problem we face there is that environmental groups that would typically advocate for our position are conflicted, and they're rationalizing development risks they would never take otherwise. Basically, we get the feeling that they will not get to sit at the cool kids table at any of their climate seminars if they say anything that may hinder the rapid advance of renewable energy development. Our most recent approach, and honestly one that we're still trying to get the measure of, is to remove the guilt factor from decision makers. BOEM is on, as noted earlier, BOEM is on the record stating that all the offshore wind development the U.S. is pursuing will not move the needle on climate change at all, much less a single project. We are using this to let decision makers know they have time to get this right. Saying no to certain proposals will not end life as we know it. There is time to consider the best way to do things, not the fastest. Speed and urgency are not the same thing. Lastly, The claim that this particular landfall is the best alternative, or in our case, they claim that this is the only alternative, puts artificial pressure on decision makers, and our challenge is that the developers control all the data on site selection and design, and we don't have an engineering firm at our disposal to fully develop alternatives on our own. Our approach has been to take advantage of the one thing we know about Avangrid. They are loose with the facts. We consistently ask for a side-by-side, fully costed comparison of the alternatives considered, and we've used FOIA for any developer documents subject to disclosure that we think might be helpful. In doing this, we've been able to identify technically and commercially viable alternatives that were identified by Avangrid's own work, but never disclosed to challenge their claim and to weaken their credibility, which is a handy segue into my next slide, winning the credibility tug of war. I've broken this slide into two basic categories, defending our credibility and challenging theirs. Defending our credibility is all about the actions and positions we take to defend what we're saying, while challenging their credibility is basically doing the opposite, taking the actions and the positions needed to surface issues with what they've been saying. To the defensive actions, as we noted on the earlier slide, the two most common accusations that are leveled at our efforts are claims of NIMBY and the accusation we are spreading misinformation. We've taken a proactive approach to NIMBY by noting first that it is an accusation leveled in an effort to shame communities into silence, and that it is an unfair characterization of community concern. Look, whenever a major project like this is proposed, there's a developer that wants to make it happen, and they put forward the most glowing message they can to sell the idea. On the other hand, there are, more often than not, communities directly impacted, and they are going to be the most motivated to ask the hard questions and raise the legitimate concerns that need to be addressed. It is a healthy and necessary part of the review process. It's vital that citizens work in partnership with city officials and bring objective input to the process, and we share this in every meeting and with every community group that we're in front of. Don't back away from the NIMBY argument. To defend against Avangrid's claim about spreading misinformation, we are both proactive and reactive. We go out of our way to remain factual and objective. We provide citations of independent sourcing for all the information we present. On the reactive side, we don't take kindly to anyone challenging our integrity, so we immediately and directly address any such challenge. We stand by our work and our word. You can disagree with our issues, you cannot care about our issues, but no one gets to challenge our integrity because you are unable to address our issues. On the offensive side of things, we focus on three areas. First, we highlight Avangrid's poor community engagement and reputation. This is a weakness they have, and it resonates with city leaders in Virginia Beach who pride themselves on citizen engagement. We offer examples of their failure to follow the most basic elements of good outreach, and we contrast it with examples of successful engagement that the city leaders recognize. We also share stories we hear from other communities that have faced similar issues like your own, and this speaks to the type of partner that we're dealing with. We also fact-check every public claim they make. In our experience with this company, this is another weak area for them. As I mentioned earlier, they are kind of fast and loose with their claims. We spend a lot of time reviewing the tapes on public meetings, time-stamping claims, and then correcting those claims with citations. Interestingly enough, the refuting citation would often come from Avangrid's own public filings or prior presentations. This wearing away of their credibility, especially on statements publicly made before the council, was sort of a death by a thousand cuts approach, but it does erode local confidence over time. Lastly, these third-party developers are not really committed to their projects long-term. They can and often do sell out when they need liquidity or the margins are not what they expected. This is a message that we shared in the background in the early days, and then late last year we found out that Avangrid is actually planning to sell a portion of their Kitty Hawk lease area, a point that had not been disclosed to the city. We filed our research on this with the city in November, And later that month, they stated their non-support for Avangrid. So with the close of 2023, we have the support of our city and have now shifted our fight to the state level where Avangrid, as I mentioned earlier, is trying to work around the city's decision. So our fight's not over, but we have made great progress, and it does give us confidence that we can win other fights along the way. So let me just offer a few closing thoughts. First off, don't listen to it's a done deal and it's not a fair process. It's not a done deal until the last coat of paint dries, and if you start assuming that it's not a fair process, I guess for me, I just lose heart. I have to assume that the rational argument and the community engagement wins in the end. It does take a complementary core team, a unified community, and a broad network. I'm blessed with balanced skill sets on our core team. Our group really complements each other well in that regard, and we respect each other's strengths and weaknesses. I'd also say a community speaking with one voice, and that's not necessarily the same message or the same way of saying it. It's just unified behind, we don't want this. Along with physical presence, there's just no substitute for that volume, that strong voice. But we also need to build robust networks at the local and state level. And I never cease to be amazed at who knows whose brother who happens to have a contact at the State House that we really need to get in touch with. And the more we've done that, the more robust our network has become, the more easily we can get access we need, and the more quickly we can ramp up response when it's needed. These are large, complex, and fast-moving issues, and I think that all the presentations today were an attestation to that. What we try to do is find our issue and stay focused on it. We're not trying to fight every aspect of offshore wind. We have found our piece of it, and we're making that our fight, and we're fighting that hard and consistently every day. So my guidance would be find your niche and be really good at it. No one person, I'm a big believer in this, no one person has all the answers, but I'm always faithful that the best answers are in the room. And effective teams really have a knack for listening and finding those best answers when they get together. And then lastly, these are long-term fights. We've done a lot to try and find ways to keep ourselves energized. If someone needs a couple of weeks to just take a break and go play with the grandkids, we do that. We support each other in that way. We have found ways to celebrate little victories along the way to keep it as positive as we can. But all the while thinking we never turn our back on the problem, even when we think it's under control. It's a lot like a fire in that. We were always instructed, don't turn your back on a fire, even when it's extinguished. You never know when it's going to flame back up. With that, I do want to thank again Susan Conley and the group there for the opportunity to share. If you're interested in finding out more about the issues that we're dealing with, you can go to our website noted here, or Suzanne and the team there have all of our contact information. We're happy to discuss any aspect of the project and what we're doing down here with anyone that's interested. And with that, Suzanne, I will turn it back over to you.
Is it all set? Okay, Joe, that